Most people think they understand the Ford Thunderbird. They picture the elegant two-seater from the 1950s, the long, luxurious cruisers of the 1960s, maybe even the retro revival that briefly brought it back into the spotlight decades later. But here's the truth. Behind that familiar name exists an entire hidden world of Thunderbirds so rare, so unusual, that even serious car enthusiasts have never heard of them. These are not the cars you see at every classic meet. These are the forgotten experiments, the limited builds, the machines created for showrooms, collectors, and sometimes no one at all. Some were built to impress the richest buyers in America. Some were created to test ideas far ahead of their time. And some were so strange they barely even felt like real production cars. Today we're diving deep into that hidden world. Because the rarest Thunderbirds were never just about transportation. They were about ambition, innovation, and sometimes pure madness. Stay with us, because what's waiting at number 1 might completely change how you see this legendary name forever. Let's begin. Number 6. The 1960 Thunderbird J-Code. At first glance, this car looks completely ordinary, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. The 1960 Thunderbird was part of what collectors call the Squarebird generation, a time when Ford shifted the Thunderbird away from being a lightweight sports car and turned it into something much bigger, much more refined, a personal luxury machine. It was smooth, it was stylish, it was designed for comfort, not aggression. But hidden beneath that calm, elegant exterior was something most people never expected. A massive 430 cubic inch V8 engine. This wasn't just a small upgrade. This was a completely different personality hiding under the hood. 350 horsepower. This Thunderbird had more than enough power to dominate the roads of its time. And yet, there were no obvious signs, no loud design changes, no racing stripes, no aggressive badging. Just a clean, sophisticated car that looked like it belonged outside a country club, but could move like a muscle car when pushed. This is what makes the J-Code Thunderbird so fascinating. It was a sleeper, before sleepers were even a thing. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. In 1960, Ford produced tens of thousands of Thunderbirds. It was a successful car, widely sold, widely seen, but out of all those units, only 377 were equipped with this powerful J-Code engine. That's not just rare, that's nearly invisible. Most people who saw one back in the day probably had no idea what they were looking at. And even today, many collectors don't realize how special this version truly is. It's a reminder that sometimes the rarest cars are the ones hiding in plain sight. Number 5. The 1957 Thunderbird F-Code. To understand this car, you have to go back to the very beginning of the Thunderbird story. Before luxury took over, before the car grew in size, the Thunderbird was something completely different. It was small, it was sporty, and it was built to compete. The 1957 model marked the final year of the original two-seat Thunderbird design. And Ford knew exactly what they were doing. They refined the styling, sharpened the lines, and created what many consider the best-looking version of the early Thunderbird. But the real story was under the hood. Code Thunderbird. And it wasn't just powerful for its time, it was revolutionary. Under that sleek exterior sat a 312 cubic inch V8, paired with a factory-installed supercharger. Think about that for a second. In the 1950s, most cars were still focused on basic performance. Superchargers were rare, complex, and usually reserved for racing machines. But here, Ford was offering it in a production car. The result? Around 300 horsepower, and performance that shocked people the first time they experienced it. This wasn't just a cruiser anymore. This was a machine that could sprint from 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. A serious number for that era. And on open roads, It could push toward speeds that very few cars could match at the time. But like all truly special machines, it came with one major limitation: rarity. Ford didn't build thousands of these. In fact, it's believed that only around 200 units were ever produced. That's it. 200 cars, each one representing one of the earliest examples of factory supercharged performance in American automotive history. And because of that, the Ford Thunderbird isn't just rare, it's legendary. It represents a moment in time when Ford pushed boundaries, when performance mattered, and when innovation wasn't just an idea, it was something you could actually drive. And, number 4, the 2002 Thunderbird Neiman Marcus Edition. Now we move forward several decades, into a completely different world. By the early 2000s, the automotive landscape had changed dramatically. Technology had advanced, and the Thunderbird itself had been reborn. Ford brought it back with a retro-inspired design, a clear nod to its 1950s roots. But instead of just releasing another version of the car, they decided to do something completely unexpected. They turned it into a luxury collectible. The result was the Neiman Marcus Edition Thunderbird. This wasn't your typical dealership car. You couldn't just walk in and buy one. Instead, it was featured in a high-end luxury catalog, the kind of catalog filled with items meant for the wealthiest buyers. And when the car officially went on sale, something incredible happened. All 200 units sold out in just over 2 hours. Think about that. A full-sized automobile, purchased as quickly as limited edition fashion items. It was a moment that proved something important. The Thunderbird wasn't just a car. It was a symbol, a piece of culture, something people wanted not just to drive, but to own as part of a lifestyle. In terms of design, this edition stood out immediately. Finished in a deep black exterior, paired with a contrasting silver hardtop. It carried an elegance that felt both modern and nostalgic at the same time. Special details, unique badging, and subtle design touches made it clear that this wasn't an ordinary model. It was exclusive, and that exclusivity is what makes it so rare today, because these cars weren't just sold, they were collected, preserved, hidden away in garages, waiting for the world to catch up to their value. We go into this list. The stranger and more fascinating these Thunderbirds become. Because what comes next is where things start to feel less like production cars and more like rolling experiments. Machines built not just to be driven, but to make people stop, stare, and question everything they thought they knew about the Thunderbird. And trust me, we're only getting started. And now, we step deeper into the shadows of Thunderbird history. Because the next cars on this list aren't just rare. They're the kind of machines that make you stop and ask, why was this even built? And more importantly, why have I never heard of it before? Number 3. The 1963 Thunderbird Sports Roadster. At a glance, it looks like a stylish convertible. Clean lines, elegant proportions, nothing too extreme. But then you notice something strange. It looks like a two-seater, even though it isn't. And that's where the magic begins. Ford took a standard 4-seat Thunderbird convertible and transformed it into something completely different. They added a fiberglass tonneau cover behind the front seats, visually eliminating the rear seats entirely. From the outside, it looked like a true roadster. Low, sleek, and focused. Almost like a European sports car wearing an American identity. But this wasn't just about appearance. This was about creating an illusion. A luxury car that pretended to be something more aggressive, more performance-oriented, more exclusive. And it worked. The sports roadster instantly stood out from every other Thunderbird. On the road, add in details like Kelsey Hayes wire wheels, a passenger-side grab handle, and subtle design refinements. And suddenly, this wasn't just another convertible. It was a statement. But the real rarity came from what was under the hood. Some of these cars were equipped with the M-Code engine, a 390 cubic inch V8 featuring 3 two-barrel carburetors. a setup that delivered serious power for its time, around 340 horsepower. And here's the part that makes collectors obsessed with this car. Out of thousands of Thunderbirds built that year, only a tiny fraction were sports roadsters. And within that group, only a handful received the M-code configuration. That means you're not just looking at a rare car, you're looking at a rare version of an already rare version. It's layers of exclusivity, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Number 2. The 1967 Thunderbird Apollo. Now this is where things start to feel almost unreal, because the Thunderbird Apollo wasn't just a car, it was an experience. Built during the height of the space race era, when technology, luxury, and futuristic design were everything, this car was designed to impress a very specific audience: the elite, the wealthy, the people who walked into high-end stores expecting to see something no one else had. And that's exactly what Ford delivered. The Apollo wasn't mass-produced. It wasn't even widely available. It was created as a special project, with only a handful ever built. And the purpose? To sit inside luxury retail spaces. Attention. To make people stop in their tracks and imagine a future that felt just out of reach. Everything about the Apollo was designed to feel advanced. It featured an electric sunroof, premium leather interiors, and details that made it feel more like a mobile lounge than a car. But the real shock was the technology. This car had a television built into it. A television in the 1960s. It also featured a radio telephone, a concept so far ahead of its time that most people couldn't even imagine using it. This wasn't just luxury. This was science fiction on wheels. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Very few of these cars survived. Some were lost, some disappeared, and others simply faded into history. Which means today, finding one is nearly impossible. And that's what elevates the Apollo from rare to legendary. Number 1. The 1963 Thunderbird Italian. And here it is, the strangest, the rarest, and arguably the most mysterious Thunderbird ever created. The Thunderbird Italian. Even the name sounds unusual, and the car itself looks like something that shouldn't exist, because it feels like two completely different ideas fused into one. This wasn't a standard production model. It wasn't even built for customers. It was a concept. A custom creation designed to showcase what was possible when imagination had no limits. The foundation started with a Thunderbird convertible, but from there, everything changed. The body was heavily reworked, featuring a unique fastback roof line made from fiberglass. The design leaned heavily into European styling, giving it a sleek, almost exotic appearance. It didn't look like a typical American car anymore. It looked different, refined, experimental, almost like something you'd expect to see at an international auto show, not driving down an American highway. The interior followed the same philosophy: premium materials, custom trim, a layout that felt more like a concept cockpit than a traditional cabin. Every detail was carefully crafted to create a sense of something new, something bold, something ahead of its time. But here's the reality. This car was never meant for mass production. It was built for display, to travel, to appear at shows, and represent the creative side of Ford's engineering and design. Because of that, it never entered normal public life. Most people never saw it. Most people never even knew it existed. And over time, it became one of those cars that feels more like a myth than a machine. Something you hear about, but rarely see. And that's exactly why it sits at number 1. Because when you look at all of these cars together, you start to understand something important. The Thunderbird was never just one thing. It wasn't just a sports car. It wasn't just a luxury cruiser. It was a platform for ideas, for experimentation, for pushing boundaries in ways that most people would never notice. Behind the iconic name, there was a hidden world of rare builds, secret projects, and machines created not for the masses, but for moments. Moments of innovation. Moments of creativity. Moments where the goal wasn't just to sell a car, but to make people feel something. And that's what makes these rare Thunderbirds so fascinating. They remind us that the most interesting cars in history are often the ones you've never heard of. So now the question is simple. Which one would you choose? The sleeper powerhouse, the futuristic luxury machine, or the mysterious concept that barely feels real? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy uncovering rare and forgotten automotive stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because the next one might be even crazier.